Welcome to Module 3. So this module, as I said, is all about getting your bum in your chair. And this lesson is all about disabusing you, actually, about the ideal writer's life. So let's get into it. So when we talk about the reasons that our bum doesn't end up in our chair, the first excuse or reason is always, I don't have the time, or I haven't made the time. And the second reason, which we may not talk about as frequently, has to do with fear. So the next lesson in this module is all about fear. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about time and how we use it. And so really, this lesson is all about this idea that there is some sort of ideal writer's life, and that very often what we can do is, we can imagine and picture in our minds what that life would look like. And we imagine that our literary heroes, the people who do get their books written, have that kind of life set up. Something like, much fewer obligations, hours and hours of silence. Maybe they own a cabin in the woods, and have very few distractions and complications in their lives. And that's why they can be so productive and get their writing done. And what we say to ourselves is, well, when my life is like that, then that's when I'm going to be able to write my book, or that's when I'm going to be able to have more time to spend on my writing. And the truth is that writers make the time to write. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And so actually, I think that this thing that we tell us about not having time to write really loops back around to the fear that we have about writing. And so that's what we're going to address in the next lesson. But I just want to point out a couple of things about how writers make the time to write. There's a story that I heard years ago about a woman who was raising small children, and she had several of them. And the only time that she could find to write her books was she would take a laptop, and she kept it in the kitchen, on the kitchen counter. And I wish I could remember this writer's name. And anytime she had just 2 or 3 minutes, while she was boiling the kettle or warming up some soup, she would write down 2 or 3 sentences. And she was getting books written that way, just writing them 2 or 3 sentences at a time. And one of the other sort of impactful stories I heard was Joanna Penn from the Creative Penn has a friend who wrote his first book while he was on the bus on his phone. So he just used his thumbs, and I don't know what app he used. I think this was before Scrivener was a phone app. And he just did that on his commute back and forth to work, and wrote his first book that way. And then, of course, both Mark Dawson and Scott Turow, both of whom are lawyers, have written books on their commute on the train. Scott Turow is the author of Presumed Innocent, which was turned into a movie with Harrison Ford, and lots of other legal thrillers. And he used to commute into New York City, I believe, and he wrote his books. And I even believe he wrote them longhand, actually, on legal pads, on his commute. And that's how he got, and still does, I believe, get his books written. And then Mark Dawson has said he did the same thing for his first couple of books, because he was still working in London. And so he would write on the train on his commute. So having said all that, this course isn't a just do it course. I'm not saying to you that the answer to this problem of not getting your bum in your chair is a matter of just putting your bum in your chair and doing your writing. That's not at all what I'm getting at. But I just wanted to point out that we can have this image in our heads of what an ideal writing life looks like, and then think that we have to wait until that happens before we start writing. And I think that's a mistake. That doesn't get books written. So I think very often we make the excuse that we don't have the time to write is that we haven't built up writing muscle. And the reason we haven't built it up is because we're dealing with fear. So again, we're going to address that in the next lesson. And the other reason is that we're listening to our thinking. We're listening to our problem-solving brain, which is what we're going to talk about next. So again, I want to point out that in this scenario, if your writing isn't getting done and you're thinking that it will only happen when you have the ideal writer's life, you are not the problem in this scenario. It's simply a problem that exists that we're going to tear down and dismantle, as it were, in the coming lessons. So that's it for this lesson, and I just want to remind you that in Module 5, we're going to talk about all the writing hacks, tips, tricks, and tools for you to use to build up that writing muscle. So that's coming up. Don't skip ahead, though. Stick with me, and we're going to jump into Lesson 2 in Module 3 now and talk about fear and your brain and how to conquer that fear. So I will see you in there.